They have three of the best mid-range players in the league currently. And I think in Kevin Durant and Devin Booker, I think two of the best mid-range players of their generation, period. And you add Bradley Beal, who's a great mid-range. And that's where they got separation when they needed it, going to the mid-range pull-up game. Because it's the one area of the floor where they can't get double-teamed. It's very difficult to time your jump so you can contest that. When a guy knows when he's going to elevate and you don't, and you get a guy backpedaling a little bit because you're going off a live dribble, stop on a dime, elevate, shoot the basketball, it's really tough to get a real honest timed contest on that. And these are three great shooting strokes. So they're going to make a high percentage of those shots.
Suns Magic was a great one between a Suns team that is starting to trend in the right direction and a Magic team that is one of the best defenses in the NBA, one of the surprises in the East. Tim, I'll kick it over to you. What stood out to you about this game between these two teams?
Well, so first of all, first thing I noticed was the way that the Suns' energy was at the start of the game. And I'm not just talking about their starting lineup. It's the guys on the bench, the environment in the building. There was an electricity about it, and it kind of made me think, because I actually was pretty critical of Kevin Durant recently when Dallas and Luka lit them up for 50, and I thought Kevin Durant's body language in that game was horrific, and I thought and I don't ever say that about Kevin Durant. The guy loves to play, and he'll show up and play against anybody. He'll take on five guys by himself, as he practically did in Brooklyn a few years ago when he played the Bucks in the playoffs. We know that the guy loves to play and he competes. And I just, I've always liked his demeanor. He's not a guy that's incessantly whining at officials. He doesn't yap his mouth a lot at other people. He just goes out and plays. That particular night, he didn't look like he believed that they had a chance. And then there was some discussion. Well, he's upset he doesn't think the supporting cast is good enough. And I'm going, man, I disagree. I think the supporting cast and some of the pieces they've added, I think it's impressive to get a guy like Grayson Allen and get Nurkic and get Eric Gordon. I mean, these are guys that fit in really well with what you do. Josh Okogie's a guy that I like a lot. So I didn't agree with it, and I didn't like the way he played that night and how negative he was and how disengaged he was at times. So now fast forward to last night, and now Bradley Beal is back. So I have a 2-year-old, and we just celebrated Christmas, so he got a bunch of toys. And the analogy I'll use is some of those toys come out of the box, and they already have a battery in them, but it's kind of like run down a little bit. So, he's got these little wooden trains, and it starts to go, and it's kind of going and puttering along. And then you go, okay, you know what? Let me go put a new battery in that thing. You put a new battery in it, and that train is flying around a track. That's what it looked like that Bradley Beal provided for them last night. It just looked like, okay, this is what it's supposed to look like now. We got all three guys. So they come out, and they hit Orlando with some haymakers, some runs, where those guys got cooking. The role players are playing well, and they get up 15 at one point in the first half, and you think they're gonna cruise. Give the Magic a lot of credit. First of all, this is a good basketball team, and I made some jokes about them earlier in the year. Like, let's see, when the bottom falls out on this hot start and everything else. No, they're better than that, and I'm going to be the first to admit it. They are better than that. Banchero is a future star. Franz Wagner is a really, really good player, and they've got great chemistry on that team, and they play really hard. So they didn't go away. And they actually came all the way back, took the lead in the fourth quarter before the Suns sort of settled matters. And the way that they settled the game was the reason that when they put these three guys together, I said this is going to be very difficult for anybody to stop. It's because of the mid-range play of their top three players, right? So mid-range, those off-the-dribble creative get to 15 to 18 feet, pull up, shoot contested jumpers. They have three of the best mid-range players in the league currently. And I think in Kevin Durant and Devin Booker, I think two of the best mid-range players of their generation, period. And you add Bradley Beal, who's a great mid-range. And that's where they got separation when they needed it, going to the mid-range pull-up game. Because it's the one area of the floor where they can't get double-teamed. It's very difficult to time your jump so you can contest that. When a guy knows when he's going to elevate and you don't, and you get a guy backpedaling a little bit because you're going off a live dribble, stop on a dime, elevate, shoot the basketball, it's really tough to get a real honest timed contest on that. And these are three great shooting strokes. So they're going to make a high percentage of those shots. And that is exactly what happened when they needed to have it in the middle of the fourth quarter. And that's kind of remind people, I think everybody reminds them of what this can be when this gets humming with 15, 20, 25 games under their belt together. You saw a little sample of it last night in the fourth quarter, and they were able to hold off a really tough, hard-nosed, competitive Orlando Magic team.
Yeah, you touched on a couple of things that I wanted to talk about. Like, obviously, it's only a 3 game win streak, and you could make the case like, okay, the Houston Rockets, they're around 500. That was the first win. Second win was the Charlotte Hornets. Okay, this was a legitimate playoff team, a very good team, and the third ranked defense in the NBA. And the Suns were able to kind of build on the momentum that they had been building. And I'm glad you mentioned kind of the joy aspect of it. It is something that Bradley Beal touched on in his post game comments about, the first couple of games coming back. I was so focused on the pressure of, returning from injury finally because I've been out for most of the year and showing people what this team can do. And I kind of lost the joy that I've had since I was a child playing this game. And you could see it on the Suns. Like, to your point, Kevin Durant's body language had been bad for those couple of weeks where they were really struggling. And I think it's been much better. Like, there have been some plays where he didn't jog back on defense. Flash forward to the other night, he's playing the passing lanes, denying near half court. And it's just little things like that where it's like, okay, you know, as much as I think the idea that he was frustrated with his supporting cast has been overblown, when you're losing, the body language can get bad really quick. And I think one thing we underrated with this whole process is just kind of the mental and emotional blow of having this guy come back, and in his second game back, he lands on somebody's ankle and he's out for another 2 weeks. I'll use another Christmas analogy. About 10 years ago, I wanted nothing more for Christmas than a Nintendo Wii. I wanted the new Nintendo video game system. My parents were going to get it for me. And what they did was they printed out a picture of a Nintendo Wii and gave it to me and said, we couldn't get one. They were all sold out, but we're going to get you one as soon as we can. I feel like that's what Bradley Beal has been for this team. Like, you can see what it's supposed to look like, but it hasn't gotten there yet. Thankfully, my parents were just playing the cruelest prank and they actually gave me the Nintendo Wii 5 minutes later. But like with this team, they haven't gotten that. So they've had to look at this thing and not be able to put it together. And I think now that it's finally whole, like, Bradley Beal doesn't fix all of the issues we've seen during the win streak, but just having him back allows them to finally build continuity. The other game the other night was the first time they've had their top 6 guys available, with Grayson and Eric and Nurkic as well. So I think the offense clicking as quickly as it has is not surprising. I think it's the defensive end, obviously, where they need more reps with their full rotation to build that continuity. But I am curious what you think of the Suns bench, because it's kind of had to be all over the place with guys in and out of the lineup. And right now, they've had Udoka Azubuike, a two-way guy, filling in as their backup center. They've had Saban Lee playing some minutes with Josh Okogie out. I'm just curious, what do you make of the Suns' supporting casts, especially with regards to that bench?
Yeah, well, first I want to say that was a pretty cruel prank your parents played on you, but I don't think it's as mean as one year. My 2 older kids, just to really mess with them, I wrapped up some household items from around the house. Like, my son was like 4, he opened it up, and it was a box of Band-Aids, and like he thought that like that was a legitimate gift. I think I gave my daughter a packet of like instant rice. They're opening it up, the looks on their faces, it was pretty classic. So that was pretty mean. So your parents got you pretty good. So look, all right, they're an interesting team because, like, take for instance last night. Just look at the box score, and you go, "Wow!" Like, there's guys that didn't even play that were playing significant minutes, like last week, that were like Bates Diop and Goodwin. These guys were playing, and Watanabe was he was in the rotation, playing a ton of minutes at the start of the year, and now they're just kind of relegated to cheerleader mode last night. Look, and part of the problem is for those guys is when you have Beal and Booker and Durant, you have 3 of those guys. Obviously, Frank Vogel's going to stagger their minutes in a way that they actually become your bench. Like, those players, Durant, Booker, and Beal, they are also your backup at another position, because you're going to stagger those guys throughout the game. It's not like you got a point, a 2, and a center, or a point, a wing, and a center, right? And now those guys have specific backups because they do certain things on the court. Well, all 3 of these guys do pretty much everything offensively. They're just 3 elite level wings. None of them are real point guards, but I thought they did a pretty good job. Beal, Booker last night did a pretty good job handling the ball like point guards. The ball got hopping pretty well. Better. It was less isolation play than I've seen out of Phoenix at times this year. I thought they moved it pretty well and made good, quick, decisive decisions with it. The bench is a work in progress, I think, going forward of what that would look like. For instance, playoff series, and we're a few months away from having to figure that out, and who knows what they do at the trading deadline or anything else, and who they might try to get later on. If there's a veteran they want to add that they can sign to bring in for the playoffs, it remains to be seen. But last night, it was pretty much just like two guys really playing the majority of those minutes. And Eric Gordon, he played 30 minutes, took 3 shots, which is shocking to me. I mean, he checks in the game. I feel like he's already taken 5 shots, and he took 3 in 30 minutes. And he didn't look comfortable really with how spread out those shots were. So they got to make sure he stays incorporated. He's going to be very valuable for them. But to answer your question, yeah, it's thin. We knew the bench was going to be thin, but I think it's still very much to be determined what ultimately that looks like and who grabs those minutes going forward. And for now, I don't think it's going to be a massive problem because of that starting 5. And one last point I want to make. If you didn't watch the game last night and you just pulled up the box score and you saw Grayson Allen's line, 10 points, 4 boards, 10 points, 2 rebounds, 4 assists, a couple of steals, you think, okay, whatever, just a decent night, average night for a guy like Grayson Allen. If you watched the game and watched every play the way I did, I was so impressed with Grayson Allen's all-around game last night. He fights over picks. He's physical. He takes on a challenge. He's tough. He's competitive. He drives the ball to the basket. Like, he had some plays that didn't show up where he made a weak side slash, caught the ball in the lane, didn't have an opportunity, and then made the next pass. And maybe that led to another pass for a corner 3, but none of it happens without his recognition of when to cut, what to do with it once he caught the ball, not force something at the rim. He had some driving shots. He had some standstill threes. I just thought, man, this guy is really giving them something because of his all-around game, and he's never really been recognized for that at the NBA level. I was very impressed with Grayson Allen last night, and I think he really fits in well, and Nurkic as well. Both of those guys fit in well because you don't have to call anything for them. And they're still going to be highly productive because they're going to play hard, take advantage of their opportunities, and they're going to be smart about what they're doing offensively. So I just wanted to point that out about really both of those guys, but primarily Grayson Allen. I thought he played a great game last night, despite his line maybe not being overwhelming.
Yeah, with Grayson, it's easy to get caught up in just the fact that he's, a top 10 3-point shooter in terms of efficiency. But to your point, he's been really good this season, especially with Beal and Booker being out for stretches, of adding the ball handling, the playmaking, the driving, especially like his ability to attack closeouts because teams are going to close out so hard on a top 10 3-point shooter is something that really makes a difference. There was a play in the first half where Beal drove, attracted a second help defender, kicked it out to KD. KD attacked the closeout, kicked it to Book. Book did the same thing, and it wound up in Grayson Allen's hands, and he wound up with a layup. Like, that's the kind of impact that he's able to make when he's sharing the court with those 3 especially. He's kind of been slotted in as that 5th starter for the time being. And I think in 35 minutes, very small sample size, they're a plus 17 together, and they've shot the ball really well at like a 60% clip. So he's been pretty good filling out that spot so far. I think to your point, they still need to figure things out with Eric Gordon a little bit. It was only a couple of games ago that he got 2 shots and made those comments about, we need to share the ball. And he was kind of right in that regard. The offense was stuck in the mud. But then he goes from, a franchise record 14 made threes over a 2-game span to last night only taking 3 shots. So they've still got some things to figure out there. But I do think, like, we knew the bench would be thin. And come playoff time, you're only going to be playing 8, maybe 9 guys tops. They already have their top 6 locked in. I think now it's a matter of figuring out who gets those last couple spots. And Frank Vogel, he said he's going to do his due diligence, getting different guys minutes, experimenting with lineups. So I think we're just kind of seeing that process play out.